So, how can you tell if a country's economy is on the right track? Or maybe headed for trouble? Well, it's not magic. It's actually more like a health checkup. And today, we're going to give you that exact toolkit, the 5 vital signs that reveal the future health of any economy. Let's dive in. I mean, it's a massive question, isn't it? You look at the global economy, and it just seems impossibly complicated. So many moving parts. But what if I told you that you could boil it all down to just a handful of key indicators? Well, that's pretty much the secret. The best way to get your head around this is to think of it exactly like a doctor's visit. A doctor checks your pulse, your temperature, your blood pressure, right? Economists do the same thing, but for a country. And when they look at these 5 vital signs all together, they get this incredibly clear and honestly pretty predictive picture of where things are headed. So here they are, the 5 big ones we're going to look at: GDP growth, inflation, the current account balance, fiscal health, and foreign reserves. Each one is a piece of the puzzle, so let's break them down one by one. Okay, let's start with the 2 you probably hear about all the time on the news: growth and prices. And the analogy works perfectly here. GDP growth, that's the economy's pulse. Is it beating strong and steady? And inflation, well, that's its temperature. Is it nice and stable, or is it spiking into a dangerous fever? All right, first up, the big one, gross domestic product, or GDP. You can see the official definition here. Basically, it's the total value of all the stuff a country makes and all the services it provides. But what we really care about, the number that tells the story, is its growth rate. Think of it as the speed of the economic engine. And this is why it's such a huge deal, why it's a powerful signal for the future. You see, healthy, steady growth, that means more jobs are being created, incomes are going up, people have more opportunities. It's that simple. But on the flip side, when growth is weak, or even worse, negative, that's the classic warning sign of a recession. We're talking job losses and some serious economic pain. So what you want to see is a nice, steady upward trend. An economy that's constantly lurching from a big boom to a sudden bust, well, that signals some real instability and weakness under the hood. Okay, pulse check is done. Now let's take the economy's temperature: inflation. Yeah, there's a technical definition, but let's be real. What it really means is how fast your money is losing its buying power. That $100 in your pocket today? High inflation means it might only buy you $95 worth of stuff next year. It's like a silent tax that just eats away at your cash. And believe me, this matters a ton for the future. When inflation is high for a long time, it just shreds your savings. It also makes it almost impossible for businesses to plan ahead. Now, don't get me wrong, a little bit of inflation is actually a good sign. It means people are out there buying things. But when it starts to spiral out of control, that's a huge flashing red light. So the signal here is crystal clear. A low, stable temperature is what you want. A high, jumpy one, like a thermometer that's about to burst, tells you the whole system is under some serious stress. Okay, so that's pulse and temperature. Now let's look at how the country is getting along with the rest of the world. All right, now we're going to zoom out a bit, because no economy is an island, right? This next vital sign is all about a country's financial relationship with everyone else. Simply put, is it earning its keep on the world stage, or is it just racking up a huge international credit card bill? The way we measure this is with something called the current account balance. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like a country's international bank statement. It adds up all the money coming in from things like exports and investments and subtracts all the money going out for imports and payments. If you've got a surplus, you're earning more than you're spending. A deficit? Well, you're spending more than you're earning. So why is this such a good predictor of the future? Think about it. Just like with your own finances, a country can't spend more than it earns from the rest of the world forever. It just can't. If you have a deficit year after year, it means you have to keep borrowing money from other countries to pay your bills. And that can lead to some major financial stress later on. You basically become dependent on other people's money, and that can dry up. So again, the signal is really clear. A country that lives within its means, that's a country on stable ground. But a country that's constantly running a huge tab with the rest of the world, yeah, that's setting itself up for a nasty fall. Okay, so we've looked at the country's relationship with the world. Now let's turn the magnifying glass inward and look at the government's own checkbook. Is the government itself being responsible with its money? This is where we get into fiscal health, and that means talking about deficits and debt. Now, this part is super important to get right, the difference between the two. The fiscal deficit, think of that as how much you overspent on your credit card this year. The public debt, That's the total balance on your credit card from all the years you've overspent, all added up. It's the government's total IOU to the world. And why does this matter? Well, a government buried under a mountain of debt has its hands tied. When a crisis hits, it has very few good options. It's usually a choice between nasty things like raising taxes, cutting important services, or just printing more money, which, as we know, leads straight back to inflation. And in the absolute worst case, it raises the risk that the government just can't pay its bills at all. So what does a healthy signal look like? You want to see a government that's getting its spending under control, shrinking that gap every year. The key number to watch is the debt to GDP ratio. If it's stable or even falling, that's great. But if that ratio is climbing, that is what economists would call a 5-alarm fire. Okay, we're at our fifth and final vital sign, and this one is all about resilience. Because let's face it, economic storms happen. The question is, when that storm hits, does the country have a good enough safety net to handle it? That safety net is what we call foreign exchange reserves, or FX reserves for short. The easiest way to think of this is as the nation's emergency savings account, but it's not held in their own currency. It's held in really stable foreign currencies, like US dollars. And they use this stash of cash to pay for essential imports and, crucially, to pay back their foreign debts. So how does this predict the future? Simple. A country with a big pile of savings can ride out a global storm without panicking. It sends this incredibly powerful signal to the rest of the world that says, hey, we're stable, we can pay our bills, you can trust us. And that kind of confidence, it acts like a magnet for foreign investment. And the two scenarios here could not be more different. You've got one country with a strong safety net and a stable currency. That's a picture of resilience. And then you have another with its savings running out and its currency tanking. That's a signal of extreme vulnerability. It's a sign that a crisis could be just around the corner. All right, so we've covered all 5 vital signs. But here's the most important part. The real secret is seeing how they all connect. You can't just look at one in isolation. You have to put all 5 of them together to really understand what's going on. So think of this as the final doctor's report. You've got GDP, which tells you about the country's capacity to expand. Inflation tells you about the stability of your money. The current account shows if its relationship with the world is sustainable. Fiscal health, that's about long-term solvency. And finally, the reserves and exchange rate tell you how well it can absorb a shock. When you look at all of them on one page, the future really starts to come into focus. Look, if there's just one thing you remember from all of this, let it be this. A country's future economic prospects are strongest when you see steady growth, controlled inflation, sustainable external balances, disciplined public finances, and adequate foreign reserves. When all 5 of those things are in the good column, you're looking at a healthy economy. So there you have it. You now have the basic toolkit of an economic doctor. The next time you see a news headline about some country's economy, you can look beyond the noise. You can check these 5 vitals for yourself and make your own diagnosis. So my question to you is, which country's economic health are you going to check first?